The law firm smelled faintly of cedar and stale coffee. I sat across from my siblings in a glass-walled conference room, high above downtown Seattle, the skyline gleaming like a promise I wasn't invited to share. "Let's begin," Mr. Carver said, his voice crisp as he unfolded Grandma Eleanor Prescott's will. I was 30 now, the so-called black sheep, but they still looked at me like I was 19 and failing at everything. $3 million to Daniel Prescott, he read first. My older brother leaned back in his designer blazer, lips twitching smugly. $3 million to Victoria Prescott. My sister adjusted her diamond bracelet, not even pretending to hide her grin. $3 million to Christopher Prescott. My youngest brother, Grandma's golden boy, was already tapping his phone, probably texting his fiancé about their next luxury trip. Properties split evenly among the three. Stocks, bonds, and the family vineyard transferred to them as well. Even the heirloom jewelry collection I'd helped Grandma organize every Christmas, gone. And to my granddaughter Isla Claire Prescott? Mr. Carver hesitated, adjusting his glasses. I leave the contents of safety deposit box number 312 at Pacific First Bank on Union Street. That was it. No money, no property. Just a mystery box. Daniel snorted. Figures. Even dead, Grandma knew Isla was a charity case. Victoria smirked. Maybe it's a stack of old postcards. Perfect for your starving artist aesthetic. Christopher didn't look up from his phone. Probably junk. Grandma always kept weird stuff. Mr. Carver slid a small envelope across the polished table. My name sprawled across it in Grandma's elegant cursive. Inside was a single brass key, its metal dulled and pitted with rust, attached to a faded leather tag etched with only 312. That's it? Victoria laughed. A rusty key. To what? Her recipe cards. Christopher smirked. Or maybe a shoebox of worthless trinkets. Seems about right for the family failure. He held up his phone. By the way, cleared out Grandma's attic this morning. Burned your old junk in the fire pit. Sketchbooks, letters, all that crap. Her house is mine now. Needed space for my home office. The words hit harder than I expected, but I didn't flinch. I just traced the jagged edges of the key, feeling its weight in my palm. Let them laugh. Let them post their victory selfies. Because Grandma Eleanor never did anything without a reason, and something told me this key wasn't junk. Not even close. Let them gloat. Let them scribble their signatures across every page Mr. Carver slid toward them, their manicured hands trembling with greed. Miss Prescott, Mr. Carver murmured, when my siblings were busy toasting their inheritance with overpriced champagne. The bank closes at 5. You may want to go sooner rather than later. Something flickered in his eyes. Knowledge, maybe even amusement. I gave a single nod. The funeral was that afternoon. A grand production staged by my siblings, as if Grandma Eleanor's farewell were a red carpet event. Daniel delivered a speech about honoring tradition while flashing a brand new Rolex. Victoria dabbed at eyes that had never shed a tear, her silk scarf costing more than my monthly rent. Christopher reminisced about preserving Grandma's memory. While living in her house, the same one where he torched my childhood sketches in his backyard fire pit. I sat quietly in the back row, the rusty brass key heavy in my pocket. After the service, relatives I hadn't seen in years suddenly rediscovered my name. Isla, sweetheart, I heard about the will, Aunt Marjorie cooed, sympathy dripping like bad perfume. So unfair, she sighed. But then, you were never really close to Eleanor, were you? She left me what she wanted me to have, I said evenly. A key? Uncle Henry chuckled. What's that open? Her cookie jar? I smiled faintly, said nothing, and slipped out early. Let them gossip. Let them pity poor Isla, the artsy disappointment with nothing but a tarnished key. Pacific First Bank towered over Union Street, an old-world building with marble columns and brass doors. Inside, Mrs. Chin, at the safety deposit counter, looked up and smiled. Miss Prescott, we've been expecting you. She examined the key, then whispered, Box 312. Your grandmother gave very specific instructions. You must come alone after everything else was settled. Her eyes twinkled. She said you'd understand why once you opened it. The vault loomed cold and silent. Box 312 slid out, heavier than expected. Inside were 3 things. 1. A thick manila envelope. 2. A worn leather journal. 3. A sleek silver key on a tag engraved with coordinates. My breath hitched as I opened the journal. Grandma's investment diary. The one she guarded for 60 years. The one my siblings swore never existed when they tore apart her study. The final entry, written a week before she died, began, "My dearest Isla, by now, your siblings believe they've claimed everything. Let them. The fortune I left them is real. Enough to keep them satisfied and blind. What they don't know is the millions they received amount to barely 15% of my actual fortune. You see, my dearest Isla, while your siblings spent their visits circling my will like vultures, you spent yours asking about my stories. While they cataloged my possessions, you cataloged my life. And in those stories, I gave you the map. Remember when I told you about your grandfather's laughable investment in that tiny San Francisco startup? The one your father mocked? That worthless stock became Apple. Or the story about the desert land I bought outside Phoenix back in the 80s? The land your siblings nicknamed Grandma's Sandbox. That sand now anchors the city's booming tech corridor. The key you hold doesn't just open a box, Ela. It opens the door to everything I built beyond greedy hands and hollow hearts. Inside this vault, you'll find the first breadcrumb. Legal documents pointing to 51 commercial properties across 8 states. Investment portfolios worth over $310 million. Collections in private storage, including the gold coins your brother Christopher once mocked as fake. The French vineyard Victoria called a fairy tale. The global patents your grandfather secured before he died. And the crown jewel, a 2,000-acre ranch in Wyoming where you first learned to ride at 10 years old. All of it hidden in trusts, buried under holding companies they never knew existed, waiting for the only grandchild who loved me for who I was, not what I owned. There is one condition, my dear. You must never share this wealth with your siblings. Not out of spite, but because they've already shown you their character. Daniel burned your artwork. Victoria sneered at your dreams. Christopher destroyed what mattered most to you. They chose their inheritance. Now you choose yours. The silver key leads to the ranch. Your true inheritance isn't money, Isla. It's freedom. The freedom to live boldly, to create without fear, to never apologize for wanting more. All my love, Grandma Eleanor? P.S. Mr. Carver has been my attorney for 40 years. Trust him. He will help you claim everything quietly and legally. P.P.S. The rusty brass key? It's from my first apartment, the place I started with nothing. I kept it to remind myself that wealth isn't what you're given. It's what you create, and, my darling, you've been creating all your life. I sat in that silent vault, tears spilling, not from grief. That had passed. These were tears of becoming. What happens when Isla walks out of that vault holding the key to a $310 million 0-cents empire? You won't want to miss what comes next. Subscribe now and join me for the reveal. Not from grief, but from the sheer weight of her faith in me. While everyone else saw the failure, the 31-year-old graphic designer who never married, who lived in a modest loft instead of a mansion, who wore thrifted jackets instead of couture, Grandma saw something more. She saw the girl who spent summers baking her cinnamon bread instead of asking for checks, the one who helped arrange her photo albums instead of appraising her diamonds, who asked about her childhood in Warsaw instead of her real estate portfolio. The manila envelope in my lap contained deeds, trust papers, account numbers, contact information for attorneys and property managers, an empire hidden in plain sight. The ranch alone was worth more than my siblings' combined inheritance. I dialed Mr. Carver from the bank vault. "Ah, Isla," he said warmly. "I trust everything was as expected?" "She left me everything," I whispered. "Not everything," he corrected gently. She gave them what they expected. Money. She gave you what they never valued. The rest. My siblings had already signed ironclad documents accepting their inheritance as final. They couldn't contest what they didn't know existed. Your grandmother was brilliant, Mr. Carver added. Shall we meet tomorrow to begin the transfers? I hung up, fingers tightening around the silver key. The coordinates engraved on its tag pointed to Wyoming, to the sprawling ranch where I spent my happiest summers, where Grandma taught me to ride horses and paint sunsets, where my siblings never bothered to visit because it was too far from their precious cocktail parties. That evening, I showed up at the family dinner hosted in Daniel's new penthouse, funded by Grandma's fortune. They toasted themselves with champagne worth more than my old car. At least Isla can finally eat a real meal, Victoria quipped, gesturing at the catered spread. Consider this charity. Yeah, Christopher slurred, swirling his drink. Maybe we should start the Isla Fund, the relief fund for failed artists. I smiled, sipping water, letting them choke on their arrogance. Daniel boasted about gutting Grandma's gardens to install a pool. Victoria bragged about quitting her job to become an investor. Christopher bragged about his second Tesla. What about you, Isla? My mother asked, voice dripping with false concern. Are you okay? I know Grandma's oversight must hurt. I'm fine, I said simply. Grandma left me exactly what she intended. A rusty key? Daniel laughed. To what? Did you even check? I did. And? Victoria pressed, curiosity flashing. It opened exactly what it was supposed to. Which was? I stood, sliding on my coat. A door. To what? Christopher demanded. I paused in the doorway, my lips curving into the smallest smile. I looked at them, my siblings, who'd inherited millions but not meaning, who'd gained wealth but not wisdom. They'd burned my sketches while sitting in a penthouse worth less than the Wyoming dirt they once mocked. To the future Grandma wanted from me, I said softly. Good night. I left them there smirking, smug and clueless. Why would they worry? They had their millions. They believed they had won. The next morning, I sat across from Mr. Carver in his corner office, the city skyline glinting behind him, and began the quiet process of claiming my real inheritance. By the end of the week, I was worth more than my siblings would earn in 10 lifetimes. But I didn't splurge on Ferraris or diamond-studded watches. I didn't quit my job at the design studio. I didn't move out of my modest loft. Not yet. Instead, I booked a one-way flight to Wyoming, drove out to the open plains, and slid the silver key into the lock of a weathered ranch house. Inside, I found one last gift. A studio Grandma had built for me. Sunlight spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows, the mountains standing guard outside. On the easel was a note in her delicate handwriting. Ain't your truth, Isla. It's worth more than their lies. 6 months later, my first solo exhibition opened in New York City. The collection Landscapes of the Wyoming Sunsets Grandma Taught Me to Love sold out in less than an hour. One anonymous buyer purchased the entire series for $2,800,000, 0 cents. The wire transfer came from E. Eleanor Louise Prescott. Thanks, Grandma. My siblings came to the opening, of course, drawn by champagne and headlines, calculating how to spin my success into their advantage. I always knew you had talent, Victoria lied smoothly. You should let me help invest your earnings. Family takes care of family. Speaking of family, Christopher added, swirling his glass, you need a business manager. I'll give you a family discount. Daniel smirked. Or back my new startup, ground floor opportunity. I sipped my champagne, the good kind now, and smiled. That's kind of you all, I said. But I have excellent advisors. They've managed my portfolio for years. Portfolio? Victoria blinked. The one Grandma helped me build, I said truthfully. Just not the way they imagined. They exchanged glances, suspicion dawning, but it was too late. They'd signed their inheritance as final, mocked the rusty key, burned my memories. Now I stood in the center of the gallery wearing a simple black dress and Grandma's real pearls, the one she hid in the ranch house with a note that read, for Isla's first exhibition. I raised my glass, smiling faintly. You know, I said, voice steady, Grandma always told me, wealth isn't what you have, it's what you do with it. Easy to say when you have nothing, Daniel scoffed, swirling the last of his champagne. I smiled. Exactly. They left soon after, irritated by my calm and their failure to unravel the secret behind my success. Let them stew. Let them whisper theories about lucky art sales while I quietly held the keys, literally and figuratively, to an empire they couldn't fathom. They would sleep soundly in their new penthouses thinking they'd won. Meanwhile, I owned the ground beneath 100 others. That night, I called Mr. Carver. I want to establish a foundation, I told him, for struggling artists. Full scholarships, living stipends, no strings attached. There was a pause, then his warm reply. Your grandmother would be proud. What shall we name it? My gaze fell on the tarnished brass key dangling from my keychain. A key to Grandma's first apartment. A key to humble beginnings. A reminder that the smallest things can unlock the greatest doors. The Rusty Key Foundation, I said, for artists who have everything but opportunity. Perfect, he said softly. And your siblings? They got what they wanted, I replied. Money without meaning. Wealth without wisdom. Exactly what they deserve. I hung up and glanced around the gallery walls, empty of my paintings now, yet heavy with promise. Tomorrow I'd fly back to Wyoming. There was a ranch to manage, properties to oversee, a fortune to protect. But tonight, I raised a glass to the woman who saw me clearly. The one who gave my siblings enough rope to hang themselves with greed, and gave me a rusty key that opened every door that mattered. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered, for knowing the worthless grandchild was worth everything. Somewhere in his penthouse, Daniel slept soundly, never realizing he lived in the smallest corner of Grandma's true empire. Victoria dreamed of becoming an investor, ignorant that her millions were crumbs compared to the accounts she didn't know existed. Christopher probably polished his Teslas, unaware I owned the dealership that sold them. And me? I held that old key and smiled. Because Grandma was right, they'd chosen their inheritance, cash they could count, flaunt, and waste. She left me something far greater, everything else. The key to her first apartment, the deed to a legacy, the lesson that being called worthless had made me the only one truly worthy of her trust. $3 million bought my siblings' silence, their signatures, their arrogance, and it was, without question, the best investment Grandma ever made. I want to hear from you. If you've been watching my journey, you know this wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience. It was about proving that being underestimated can be your greatest strength. So tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Would you have told your siblings the truth or let them live in their illusion? Be honest. I read every single comment because your thoughts matter to me. And if you've ever been called worthless or made to feel small, listen to me. You are not defined by their opinion of you. You are defined by the choices you make when no one believes in you. That rusty key wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a reminder that humble beginnings can open doors to extraordinary futures. So keep going, keep building, keep believing in yourself, even when the world doesn't. If you want to see what comes next, what I'll do with this empire and the legacy Grandma entrusted to me, hit that subscribe button right now. Join me, because this isn't just my story anymore. It's ours.